Priority 5, and this is the question. In the current COVID economy, in the conditions that we're now facing, what are the opportunities and risks that your organisation must address? In previous videos, we've covered thinking about conditions, immediate and emergent at scale, the global coming into the local, the immediate now and into the future, the emergent. And these are coming at you as strong and weak signals. Sometimes it might just be a whisper, sometimes it might be a shout, but you've got to be listening through all of the noise that's going on. And lastly, conditions watching as part of your everyday work. You have to be doing it constantly because conditions are changing at an exponential rate. So the COVID economy is alive and well for those that know it. So in this video, we're going to look at understanding opportunity and risk, and particularly looking at them as two sides of the same coin, particularly when you're throwing that coin to find out what is an opportunity and what is a risk. So we'll look at conditions that reveal strategic opportunity risk, also looking for three important elements: unfair arbitrage, stranded assets, and mad investments. Investments based on managed adaptive decline. And finally, in flipping the two-sided coin, we're going to understand that it's what you value as to what calls a head or a tail, or an opportunity and a risk. So let's start with understanding opportunity and risk. We define opportunity as a time or set of circumstances that makes it possible to do something. A risk is pretty clear. It's a situation involving exposure to risk or danger. Now we look at these things as two sides of the same coin. Where there's opportunity is also risk, and vice versa. They are equally important, and it depends on how you deal with them that makes the difference. Conditions reveal strategic opportunity risk. Those two sides of the same coin show up in the conditions, immediate and emergent conditions. As these signals come at you, you can start to see the opportunity and attached risk, also the attached risk and the other opportunity that goes with it. So obviously, if you're going to pursue opportunity or mitigate risk, or have them together and combined, you must understand the COVID economy and how this strategic opportunity risk will play out. Now let me give you an example of this. As a condition, we know that the relevance of the old square metre economy is in decline or severely in question. The strategic opportunity risk, or SOR, is the decrease in density occupying available space changes the demand for space and how space is valued and used. So it depends on which industry you're in or which organisation you're in as to if this is an opportunity or a risk. And it could be both an opportunity and a risk, and SOR can show up like that. But the risk is obviously the square metre economy business model is rapidly declining in value. Now that means that the person who's involved deeply in the square metre economy and sees that risk, it must mitigate that risk, but it must mitigate it by taking into account the opportunity. Equally, the opportunity that's there for new business models that utilise unoccupied space. So that leaves a quandary for someone who has square metre economy investments to actually be able to say, do I just mitigate that risk and get rid of it, or do I then look at the opportunities that are attached to it? Because what you're going to find is someone is going to pick up the opportunity whether you mitigate the risk or not. So looking at these as a combined whole is what makes all the difference in generating value in the conditions that you're presented with. So who must be aware of what we're talking about here? Obviously it's commercial renters, big office space, commercial spaces, all those sorts of things that people rely on for work that no longer rely on those types of spaces. Transport, where the square metre that you buy to travel somewhere is no longer used. Also those that are dependent upon the square metre economy users, the operators upstream and downstream, they have really got to think about this as well in terms of the opportunities and risks that they face with this change of conditions for the square metre economy. So now I want to talk about three things that you must watch for when you're making this analysis of what is opportunity and risk within conditions. So let's start with looking at unfair arbitrage. So unfair arbitrage occurs when one party within a value network owns the majority of an opportunity but lays off the majority of the risk to another party. Now this is an immense risk for both parties as it weakens the overall stability, resilience and mediation within the overall value network. And why is that important? Is because the value network operates as a whole organism. If you kill your upstream or your downstream, your clients or your suppliers, your organisation will fail as well. So you have to really make sure that's the overall value network and the sharing of value throughout the value network, so it's substantial and it's stable as much as it can be. So as an example of unfair arbitrage, just think about it in terms of supermarket oligopolies. A lot of times, and not in every supermarket or every supermarket chain, and not necessarily with every producer, but a lot of producers, particularly small to medium enterprises, have to work within the rules of a supermarket. And what this creates is the opportunity that comes to the supermarket, but not necessarily the same opportunity or level of opportunity to the producer or the person providing the goods into the supermarket. They have to take a lot of risk. They have to take a lot of risk in terms of what they do with produce if it doesn't sell. They have to take a lot of risk in terms of price, etc., etc. So we really have to be cautious and look at unfair arbitrage in the COVID economy as it starts to move forward. So my closing point on this unfair arbitrage is to make sure there's an equality in the value placed on opportunity and risk. Now the next thing to watch for is stranded assets. Assets that have to suffer write-downs, devaluations or conversion to liabilities. And what we're saying there is assets that are no longer able to generate sustainable value. They've basically lost value. So to give you a couple of examples, anything based on fossil fuel, coal-fired power stations are typical, and you see the market reacting to these as stranded assets. You're not going to invest in something that's going to be stranded in the future, such as a coal-fired power station, because what is it going to be doing in the future? Alternative energy is going to be replacing that, whether you like it or not. The second is oversupply of physical space, and this really gets back to the square metre economy. Why would you invest in new developments when we're not too sure of what the occupation is going to be in the future? And that goes for retail and commercial space. Also, complex supply chain infrastructure and logistics becomes really important to look at any organisation that relies on that global complexity. So these are all things you have to watch for. Not that they are definitely going to be a stranded asset, but something that you'll have to watch for. And you have to watch them through continuous conditions analysis. So finally, the ultimate in stranded assets. It's almost like a stranded asset that you create yourself. And that is investing in madness, or managed adaptive decline, or MAD investments. These are investments made that further a state of managed adaptive decline. They have little hope of generating sustainable value in the future emergent conditions. Now, if you think about the COVID economy and MAD investments, now one of them is hanging on to business as usual mindsets. So that is investments in business as usual that's got no chance of working in the future, mainly because you haven't done the work, or the work hasn't been done in looking at conditions, opportunity, risk based on the COVID economy, the emergent conditions. You're investing in business as usual to keep things happening and trying to get back to the way they were, rather than thinking about what the future holds. Also looking at buyouts. This is going to be a time for really picking up low-priced assets that may prove to be worthless in the future. Now you can go and buy stocks in all sorts of companies or buyout companies. You're going to find that do they have longevity in the future of the COVID economy? And I guess what we're saying here is any investment without a good conditions analysis and looking at it in terms of opportunity risk assessment before you make an investment in any particular business innovation. Now, what we can sometimes see here is some of these innovations and investments take a long time to actually mature or not. So it can be the death of 1,000 cuts and an exponential death of 1,000 cuts. A long time to occur, and then bang, you see it's not working. Now, just a word of warning. I am not being prescriptive here. The examples I use are not set in concrete. The primary point is look to the emergent conditions within the COVID economy before you invest. So let me make a quick point here, and it's about our next video. We have to start thinking about what do we value when we make a decision about what is an opportunity and what is a risk, or what is an opportunity risk. Your values will bias how you see the conditions in terms of an opportunity and a risk. If you have a certain set of values that holds on to the past, then you're going to be biased in that way. you really have to come back to asking yourself a question: what sort of value do I want to generate in the future based on what values? And what you value now might not be value in the future. And the COVID economy holds immense value yet to be tapped. But we do have to think about strategic opportunity and risk being two sides of the same coin, understanding that one person or organisation's risk may be another's opportunity. We have to watch for unfair arbitrage, stranded assets and mad investments. And we have to be calling opportunity or risk depending on what you value. So this leaves us with the question: what are the strategic opportunities and risks, or the strategic opportunity risks, that you and your organisation face within the COVID economy? So in the meantime, think about it.